What up, Wizards? It's Dev from The Place, and it's the big day, y'all. Spider-Man was not so spectacular, so hopefully these new Avatar cards can bend Standard back towards the right direction. Early reports look good to me, at least. A lot of these cards bent the air right out of my lungs when I read them. I was like, what is going on with this? Just crazy cards. And there's a lot of them, too. We got to see like 50 cards today, and half of those are rare. So we'll get to those in a minute, but as usual, we're going to start kind of dipping our toe into the commons and uncommons, get reacquainted with some of these new mechanics from the set, because there's kind of a lot of them, but that said, not all of them are super complicated. You know, allies are back. I guess allies are back on stuff like White Lotus Reinforcement. White Lotus? It's a good show. White Lotus Reinforcements over here is just a 3-mana guy in Selesnya that gives all your allies +1/+1. Kind of good to see this creature type back. It's been, I don't know how long. Like, it's more than a decade, right? We haven't had to care about allies in a really long time. But I guess some portion of the player base will be really happy with that. But that's not the only ally tech that we got to see. There's a bunch of stuff in the lower rarities that cares about it. But to be honest, I wish some of it had been better. We got stuff like Allies at Last and Invasion Tactics to look at. Allies at Last is 3 mana, 2 and a green for an instant with affinity for allies. Up to 2 target creatures you control each deal damage equal to their power to target creature an opponent controls. Actually not too bad if you've got at least 2 allies on the table. Then they can double up on one dude. But even if you only have 1 ally at the table, it's still instant speed bite effect. And that's going to be pretty good in draft. Invasion Tactics is 5 mana, 4 and a green for an enchantment. When it enters, creatures you control get +2/+2 till end of turn. And whenever one or more allies you control deal combat damage to a player, you can draw yourself a card. 5 mana for that's a little bit too much just to draw 1 extra card a turn. So again, this looks like for the allies deck in limited, which is mostly where that deck is going to shine, and mostly in green and white. So remember that for your pre-release, but Invasion Tactics looks pretty decent for grinding out value there, and it doubles as kind of an overrun effect too, which could be really good if you've got a bunch of allies out. But another pretty simple to understand mechanic got really fleshed out today, and that is the lesson mechanic. They super confirmed that we will certainly not have learn in this set, but we do go back to Strixhaven in a couple of sets, so maybe we'll get some learn support for all these lesson cards. But that doesn't mean that we don't have lesson payoffs in the set. And that said, let's look at some of the actual lessons first, stuff like Energy Bending and Zuko's Exile. Now, Energy Bending is 2 mana for an instant speed lesson. Land you control gain all basic land types until end of turn, and draw a card. So first of all, they alluded to the idea that the all basic land types thing might matter on a couple of cards in this set, so we'll get ready for that down the line. But obviously this would be pretty good with domain cards and whatnot. It just basically fixes your mana for the rest of the turn at instant speed. And maybe the best thing about it is that it's a 2 mana instant speed card that just draws a card that any deck can play. It's kind of like having a card with cycling in your hand. And that ain't half bad, because there are things in the set that care about lesson cards in your graveyard specifically. So again, being able to just cycle one is kind of nice some of the time. I don't hate this. But Zuko's Exile is 5 mana for another instant speed lesson where you exile an artifact, creature, or enchantment, and its controller creates a clue token. So 5 mana to exile a thing is a little expensive, right? But at least you get the instant speed, and again, at least any deck can play it. Not to say they will, but you know, you'd be surprised where stuff like this might show up from time to time. Other lessons included Yip Yip, and a really good one, I think, Seismic Sense. Now, Yip Yip is just a single white mana for an instant speed lesson. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If that creature is an ally, it also gains flying until end of turn. So a little bit of extra ally support on a totally normal combat trick here. But, you know, with a lot of lessons in the past, I feel like they would have wanted to make this like sorcery speed. So at least we got it at instant speed. But Seismic Sense is a single green mana for a sorcery. There it is. It's a lesson. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of lands you control. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So on turn 1, this looks at a single card, and it's probably not great there. But on turn like 7, it's just a creature tutor, you know, or if you want to find a specific land, I guess it does that too. So a 1 mana for this is not too bad, and it's one of those that gets really, really good in the late game or even the mid game. You know, it's turn 4. I have 4 or 5 mana to spend on my side of the table. I can probably spend 1 mana on this and then spend again 3-4 mana on something else, especially whatever I end up getting from this, you know. Not quite a tutor or anything, but it reminds me of like a Pillage the Bog effect or something like that at a super duper cheap mana cost, and I respect it. Uncle Eero's simple enough, but I like him. He wants to play cards with you, so of course I like him. He's 3 mana, 1 and then 2 Gruul hybrids for a 4/2 legendary human noble ally with firebending 1. Again, in case you need a reminder on this one, whenever this creature attacks, you add a red mana, and that mana lasts until the end of combat. Lesson spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, so that means that they're at the correct rate. Usually, they're like a mana off of the right rate to cast a good lesson, but I guess this helps with that. I still don't think this is going to shock the world or anything, but this is decent text. Not terrible text in your lesson deck. I just don't think the lesson deck goes too far past limited, and I think that this sort of signposty uncommon for that format is pretty good proof of that. Now, Dragonfly Swarm, on the other hand, kind of looks like a killer. This is 3 mana, 1, a blue, and a red for a star 3 dragon insect with flying and ward 1. This creature's power is equal to the number of non-creature, non-land cards in your graveyard. When this creature dies, if there's a lesson in your graveyard, draw a card. Okay, so a little bit of extra gravy if you've got lessons in there, but you don't have to have lessons. It's just kind of a haughty Jin sort of variant, right? With a ward ability, which is, it's not like, you know, the most expensive ward ability, but it's still at least there, and I'll take that. Flying's always a good ability, and this can get really big. It's not like it counts instants and sorceries specifically. It counts those. It also counts like planeswalkers, you know, enchantments and whatnot. You know, all sorts of things, artifacts. So this could actually be really, really big, like really, really fast in the right deck. So I like it, and I especially do like it in limited. I think it's going to be great there, but I think this thing might be able to shine outside of limited, especially in like budgety builds. There's a couple more cards that care about lessons in a cool way. We got to see Sparring Dummy and Gram over here. Now, Sparring Dummy first, I guess. This is just a cool guy. 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 1/3 artifact creature Scarecrow with Defender. You can tap it and mill a card. You may put a land card milled this way into your hand. You gain 2 life if a lesson card was milled this way. So that's kind of cute, like flavor, I guess. You know, like if you actually learned a lesson, you gain a little bit of life from it. That's kind of cool. But either way, I think that this is just good ramp. It's not really ramp, is it? You know, it's not putting the card into play, but still, for maybe like a landfall build or something like that, I don't know. I don't know what you do with it, but I still think overall the flavor is nice. But Gran, on the other hand, looks like a pretty decent card. This is a single blue mana for a 1/2 legendary human peasant ally. Whenever Gran becomes tapped, excuse me, draw a card and then discard a card. All right. Non-creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast as long as there are 3 or more lesson cards in your graveyard. So you got to get there. You have to play a bunch of lessons in your deck. But once you do that, again, it's basically like other lessons you control cost 1 less to cast. So Gran and the uncle together, you get the whole family together, and suddenly your lessons don't cost anything to cast. But this has the distinction of being a 1-drop, which I think is kind of a big deal, you know? Like you can use it to crew stuff or station things or tap her down in other ways. You don't necessarily have to attack with Grandma or anything, but, you know, maybe you'll still be able to get away with attacking with Grandma on like turn 2 if you went first. And then being able to loot is actually a pretty big deal on your 1-drop. I think it's not so bad. So, and it's whenever it becomes tapped. So if you can somehow untap it and then tap it again several times, you get a bunch of loots going. I think there might be loots or strings with this. So altogether, just a really well-designed card, I think. But let's move on and give another mechanic a chance. This one, water bending, which I won't say is a, quote, interesting mechanic. I don't want to shade it too much, but I do think it could be a powerful mechanic under the right circumstances. So let's look at North Pole Patrol and Water Tribe Rallier here first. Now, fun fact, Pole Patrol, first movie I was ever in. This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human soldier ally. Tap it to untap another permanent you control, and you can water bend 3 tap target creature an opponent controls. So water bending can be paid any number of ways. You can pay it with mana, or you can pay it by tapping down your artifacts or your creatures. So it's kind of like they took Convoke and Improvise, and they just slapped them onto the same ability. But that means that it's really, really easy to pay these costs. Like there's a lot of ways, especially to make token artifacts. And, you know, there's ways to make a bunch of token creatures too, so keep that in mind. But especially, we've got all these little token artifacts just floating around in Standard right now. There's like 5 of them you can make, you know, so that might be really strong with water bending. I'm not sure if it's going to be strong with this thing in particular, but, you know, it could be strong with one thing or the other. Now, Water Tribe Rallier, on the other hand, first of all, it's a gorgeous looking card. Good job. But apart from that, I think this might actually be a pretty good little game breaker, card advantage engine in limited. So pay attention to this one. This is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/2 human soldier ally with waterbend 5. You don't have to tap it, by the way. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card power 3 or less from among them, put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So 5 might look like a lot, but again, you can tap your lands down. You can tap it down for its own ability, so it's really only 4 mana under those circumstances. And if you have a couple of other allies left, you can get this down to like 2 mana really easily, you know, like effectively just 2 mana. And on the right board state, you might be able to effectively draw 2 creatures a turn off of it. The ability is instant speed, which I think is really nice because you can just kind of hold your mana till the end of your opponent's turn, hold your creatures down until the end of your opponent's turn. You can, you know, use the creatures that are blocking right now that you know are going to die at the end of combat to go ahead and help you waterbend this ability and help replace them when they die. So I don't know. I think this is actually a pretty decent 2-drop for limited that you want to be looking out for. But we move now to firebending, which we have looked briefly at, but there were a couple other lower rarity pieces we saw with it, like Azula on the Hunt and Sun Warriors first. Now, Azula is a cool character, 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 4/3 legendary human noble with firebending 2. Whenever Azula attacks, you lose 1 life and create a clue token. So it's not quite drawing a card, right? But still, I'll take a clue token from time to time, especially knowing some of the stuff that we can do with clue tokens, right? They would go really well with waterbending, so that's cool. But firebending 2 is fine too, especially on a 4 mana 4/3. I expect to see a good amount of this in limited. As far as Sun Warriors goes, this is 4 mana, 2, a red and a white for a 3/5 human warrior ally with firebending X. X being the number of creatures you control. Okay, you can pay 5 and create a 1/1 white ally creature token. You cannot waterbend that 5, notably. You have to actually pay 5 mana. That's terrible, but I will take a creature factory in limited. This will also help break stalemates, but what will also help break stalemates is the freaking, firebending 6 or whatever you're going to end up getting out of this. You have to find a way to use the mana, and that's where its activated ability comes in, right? But firebending X is a pretty wild thing to be able to do, especially in allies decks in limited that will probably be able to generate 6 to 8 creatures like relatively reliably. So this could firebend so much, and it's actually got a pretty stout power and toughness. But my favorite of the firebending uncommons today is definitely Zhao Ruthless Admiral. He actually looks like he might go really well in Commander, if not as your commander, then in 99 of a couple of things. And there are a few legendary uncommon creatures today that I feel that way about. Not just Big Boy Commander, but also Pauper Commander. This guy would make an excellent Pauper Commander. This is 4 mana, 2 and then 2 Rakdos hybrids for a 3/4 legendary human soldier with firebending 2. Whenever you sacrifice another permanent, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. So this could go in the 99 of that Jund Edge of Eternity's deck that wants to sacrifice its own lands. You just give all your creatures this massive bonus every turn, and then you return the lands anyway. This could go in any Aristocrats deck, but especially the 99 of like Judith Scourge Diva or something like that goes very nicely with your Mayhem Devils and whatnot. So just really cool for Aristocratsy black-red decks in that environment. Really cool for a couple of other decks for that matter. Anytime you're sacrificing anything, even if it's just treasure tokens, all your creatures get +1/+0. It means I can big score, and if I've got like 1 or 2 other treasures laying around, my dudes could end up getting like +4/+0. That's pretty crazy, man. I think that this is actually like really pretty okay at the very least. It's just not a ringing endorsement. I don't think it sees play in Standard at all, very likely, but again, there's probably setups in Commander where this can be just slick. Let's calm it down a little bit and look at some food-related cards, because we got a couple of those today. Stuff like Leaves from the Vine and Unlucky Cabbage Merchant. This is Leaves from the Vine, though, first. Let's look at this one. It's 2 mana, 1 and a green for a saga. You can, on Chapter 1, mill 3 and then create a food token. Okay. On Chapter 2, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 guys you control. All right, and then on Chapter 3, draw a card if there's a creature or a lesson card in your graveyard, which shouldn't be too hard to engineer, but altogether, I'm just not that impressed by this. We know there's going to be a few sagas in this environment. We know that there's at least 1 or 2 cards that care about sagas. So, I don't know, cool to have some sagas. I like them as a card type, but again, altogether, I just, I want to like this a little bit more than I do. Now, Unlucky Cabbage Merchant, on the other hand, is a pretty cool magic card. This is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/2 human citizen. When it enters, you get a food token. Whenever you sacrifice a food, you may search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. If you search your library this way, put this creature on the bottom of its owner's library and then shuffle. So, I can stack a bunch of food sacrifices, right? Like I can sack a food, put this on the stack, and then while it's on the stack, sack food, sack food, sack food, sack food. Like, you know what I mean? Like that works, right? Get a bunch of different. I can do that, right? I hope. But either way, this could be good even with one sacrifice of a food. And note that you don't have to crack the food by using its own ability and paying the 2 mana. You can just sack it to some other effect and this will still trigger. So this could be a cool little, ramp ability a la, Secure Tribe Elder or something like that, Steve. But obviously nowhere near as good as Steve. But I will say, Steve does not give you ETB value. And this does. And it goes back into your library, which is kind of cool because you'll get it again later and then maybe ramp more. So altogether, dude, I kind of really, really like this guy. I'm not sure where he goes in Standard, but I love the flavor. And I do think there is some power to it. But you know what else we got in this set? We got sagas and stuff like that. Food, stuff you might not expect. We got something you might totally expect. And that is shrines over here on Crescent Island Temple. This is 4 mana, 3 and a green for a legendary enchantment. It's a shrine. When it enters, for each shrine you control, create a 1/1 red monk creature token with prowess. Whenever another shrine enters that you control, create a 1/1 red monk creature token with prowess. So pretty cool. You got 2 shrines in play when you play it. This counts as well. So you got 3 monks. That's fine. And then later on when you play shrines, you continue to get more monks. This is a pretty great shrine compared to what most shrines look like, right? I don't usually love the design on shrines, but this is actually really, really sick, dude. I like anything that's going to keep me in creatures for the rest of the game. But speaking of sagas and shrines and all kinds of stuff, we also got to see Guru Patik. Did I get his name right? I'm sorry if I didn't. This is 4 mana, 2 and then 2 Simic hybrids for a 2/4 legendary human monk ally. When it enters, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a lesson, a saga, or shrine from among them. Put it into your hand. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. Whenever you cast a lesson, saga, or shrine spell, put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature that you control. So again, I like the flavor here. A guru, it tells you stories and you learns your lessons and tells you about history. And that's what this is doing on 3 different card types. 3 kind of undersold card types that need a little bit more love from time to time. So this might not be the most powerful card in the world necessarily, but it is the kind of card I really like to exist. So I love the design on it. And there might even be a deck or 2 from time to time. I'll play this in Commander. And for what it's worth, I don't think it's going to be a super powerful Pauper Commander, but it's at least a unique one that you don't really see too much of every day. So it might be fun to build a deck in that format around it too. But now we're getting into the best commons and uncommons of the day. I told you there'd be a couple at the very least. We'll get into first the Cycle of Renewal and Honest Work. Now, Cycle of Renewal is effectively a functional reprint of Harrow. Or Harrow, excuse me. But it is a lesson, which means I guess technically it's better strictly. I don't know if that, maybe. This is 3 mana, 2 and a green for an instant speed less than sacrifice a land. Search your library for up to 2 basic cards, land cards. Put them onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. So now actually I have to make sure that Harrow is an instant. Am I absolutely sure that Harrow is an instant in this piece? Because now I just can't be sure of anything in my life. Harrow is an instant. Okay, just making sure. So, in any case, yeah, this is good. This is typically a pretty good effect. We just saw, again, I hate to bring up the same deck twice in the same video, but the Jund Edge of Eternity's deck plays multiple Harrow effects in it, and this is another one you can kind of shoehorn in if you want to take out the Cultivate that the deck also comes with. I guess that this would probably be a good thing to put in. But the cool thing about this is that it also works in the Tifa Mossborn Hydra landfall decks. We already have Springbloom Druid, which is effectively this on a body, but I don't think that deck will mind playing basically 8 copies of this effect at 3 mana because they just want to put as many lands into play at the same time as they possibly can. So this could actually have some standard chops on it, and especially being a lesson that's not embarrassing to play, I think is pretty cool. And they pointed out on stream, I think this is a really cool interaction, that the way Earthbending works, if you'll remember, if you have an earth-bent land, if it would die or be put into exile, it comes back into play tapped. So if you have a land that has been earth-bent, you can Cycle of Renewal, sack that land, and it comes back into play. So it's kind of like you didn't sack a land. That's killer, dude. Cool interaction. So again, altogether, I think this card might have some stuff to do. And then Honest Work is our witness protection / unable to scream / on and on. effect of the set. This is a single blue mana for an aura that enchants a creature an opponent controls. When this aura enters, tap enchanted creature and remove all counters from it. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a citizen with base power and toughness 1/1 and has tap. Add colorless, named Humble Merchant. So rather than legitimate business person, now they're a humble merchant. And apparently a humble merchant can at least tap for mana. Legitimate business person can't even do that. But the reason they said why they allowed the creature to tap for mana is because it would be pretty lame to hit an earth-bent land with honest work. And now you just blank their land and it's like a 1-mana land destruction spell. That was the reasoning with that. So now we get a probably worse card than a Witness Protection. All things considered, but at least this removes all the counters from the creature. It taps it down when you do play it, making sure you can get in that turn or whatever. So altogether, there's some trade-offs here to make it slightly better, but I think at the end of the day, it doesn't really make that bar. I think that things like Witness Protection and especially Unable to Scream are probably mostly just better than this, but I do like what they tried to do with it. It's honest. Now, my uncommon commander of the day goes for sure to Dai Li Agents. This is 5 mana, 3, a black and a green for a 3/4 human soldier. When it enters, Earthbend 1 and then Earthbend 1 again. Earthbend 1 twice. Whenever this creature attacks, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life. X being the number of creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them. So again, this not only works with Earthbend, right? But it works with everything. There's so many ways to get counters on guys or just play dudes that like normally just naturally get counters on them when they come into play, right? That I think this could be a great Pauper commander. I've been really into that format recently, and I think this could be easily the Pauper commander of the video, for sure, definitely. And there's been a couple of them that I want to play, man. Zoa was great too, or Zao rather. But either way, yeah, I think this is a really, really fun looking ability where if you have, +1/+1 counter on it, plus the 2 Earthbent lands, plus another Earthbent land, plus maybe 2 other guys with counters on them, like you're swinging in for like 6. Off the rip, that's 6. And if this guy gets really, really big, then, suddenly you're dealing even more damage just in combat. So I think this dude is really, really cool. I think that, the idea that you're going to hit for 20 with it is probably a pipe dream. If you have that many creatures with counters on it, you're winning the games in other ways, right? But still, I think this is a really cool design, if nothing else. But to me, best uncommon of the day was Solstice Revelations, another lesson. This is 3 mana, 2 and a red, an instant. Exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost if the spell's mana value is less than the number of mountains you control. If you don't cast the card this way, put it into your hand. You can also flash this back for 7 mana, 6 and a red. So this does a lot. I think the worst thing about it is that it doesn't say less than or equal to. It just says the mana cost of the spell has to be less than the number of mountains you control. So if you play this for 3 mana and you have 3 mountains, you have to cast a 2-drop or less, is how that works. And I think that's not quite as intuitive or powerful as I would have wanted it to be, but still, if I have 5 mountains out, I get a free 4-drop off of this, at which point it generated mana value, which I think is pretty cool. Late in the game in Big Red, if I have 7 mountains in play, this can cast a 6-drop, and that means it generated double the amount of mana I played for it. It is instant speed, so you can play it on your opponent's turn and ignore those timing restrictions because that's how the card works. So you can get a big creature off of this, you can get a sweeper on your opponent's turn off of this if that's what you need. I just think this is probably pretty good, but it's very situational, and it's probably not going to be great until the later game. So has to go in a big red deck that's not currently extant in Standard, so I worry about that too. But all things considered in a vacuum, I think this could be a really powerful card, especially at instant speed. I'm excited about that. Now, Airbender Ascension is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an enchantment. When it enters, airbend up to 1 target creature. That just means exile it from the battlefield, and its controller can cast it again by paying just 2 mana. Whenever a creature you control enters, put a quest counter on this enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, if this enchantment has 4 or more quest counters on it, exile up to 1 target creature you control, and then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So I like seeing the return of quest counters. These are always enchantments that I think are fun to see. I think that this kind of just effectively removes a creature for a turn or two, if that's what you needed to do. They can play it again on the cheap, but it still gets a creature off the table for a second. And obviously you can airbend one of your own guys too and repeat that into the battlefield trigger. Pretty nice. But whenever a creature you control enters quest counter, that means this should fill up with quest counters relatively quickly. And when it does, you get another free blink, and it's an immediate blink. You don't have to wait till end of turn or anything like that. So you have to wait till the beginning of your end step to do this, but what I mean is you don't have to wait like an entire turn cycle for the creature to come back. Just altogether, I think it might actually be pretty good, if you use it as a pseudo removal or tempo spell when it comes into play, and then later blink one of your own dudes with it. Yeah, seems all right to me, but we'll see if it's as good as I want it to be. But altogether, clever design. Next in the rares is Boiling Rock Rioter. This is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 3/3 human rogue ally with Firebending 1. If you tap an untapped ally you control, you get to exile a card from a graveyard. And whenever this creature attacks, you may cast an ally spell from among the cards you own exiled with this creature. So incentivizes exiling allies from your own graveyard. And then recasting them later, which is kind of nice, the way that the wording works here. You can use its firebending ability to cast a creature. Again, ignoring those usual timing restrictions. I think it's pretty cool. You can even cast another copy of it. Obviously, you can also use its ability to, keep your opponent off their graveyard plan, which is, I think, kind of important. The ability's instant speed. You can use it more than once in a turn, depending on how many allies you have. It can tap for its own abilities. So I don't know. I think that situationally out of a sideboard or something, this could be yet another way of scheming graveyards in Standard, and not a terrible one either. But again, I think there might be like better ways of doing, ghost vacuums in this environment right now, and people are already stacking their sideboards with that. So how much room is there for something like this? Precious little, but I still think having a not embarrassing threat for the mana cost that also generates mana and does a couple of other things, you could do worse. Speaking of allies, let's take a look at Earth King's Lieutenant. Just 2 mana, a green and a white for a 1/1 human soldier ally with trample. When this creature enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each other ally you control. Whenever another ally you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So like a champion of the parish/perished, but 2 mana. Double the amount of mana a guy like that would normally cost, but they threw trample on it, so if he gets large throughout the course of the game, then that's great. But you have to cast 2-3 allies for him to get like a decent chunk level, right? But apart from that, if you cast him on turn 2, he's only ever really going to put a counter on one guy. So you probably have to cast this on maybe turn 3 after a 1-drop ally, 2-drop ally, 1-drop ally on 3, this guy, and then you're spreading a lot of counters around. And I'll take that. But that also means that when you untap on turn 4, you still have cards in your hand and mana to use to make him larger. I do think this is at a really weird place where if you get it on turn 5 after a sweeper, it doesn't do anything. You don't have creatures for it to put counters on. You don't have other allies in your hand to grow it, right? So this could be kind of bad, but there was a point in Standard where this was a really good Magic card. I'm just not sure that we're still there, to be honest. It doesn't even have to be turn 5 after a sweeper. Your opponent hits you with Split Up or something, or Pinnacle Starcage. And now this does nothing on turn 4, which was the turn you wanted to, anthem all your guys and get in for a bunch of damage. But it's just not going to happen now, Chief. So I think there are traps to this card, but I do still think that cards like this have been somewhat successful in the past, and this could be too. Now, Firebending Student, I don't know if I'm missing something on this, but I don't know why this card had to be rare or 2 mana. I guess one or the other, right? Make it 1 mana and make it rare, make it 2 mana and uncommon, but they went both ways. 2 mana, 1 in a red for a rare with that's a 1/2 human monk with prowess. Firebending X being this creature's power. So that's probably why it's rare right there, but I still think that 2 mana is probably too much for a Monastery Swiftspear with no haste. Maybe if you cast the pump spell, that's another thing. You have to cast the pump spells on it before it attacks, which I don't love either. But if I do cast a pump spell that gives a +3/+0, then what do I get? 5 mana? You know what I mean? I get 5 mana when I attack with it. That could be disgusting. So maybe it's a little too dangerous at 1 mana. Firebending X is something you definitely have to respect, but I just don't see this seeing too much play in Standard, when we have so many other good 2-drop options. Emberheart Challenger and even Slickshot Show Off and stuff, and Manifold Mouse for that matter. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure about it, but it could be super wrong, right? Firebend 3 on most turns might be really good. But next is Fire Lord Azula, cool card for Commander here. 1 and Grixis colors, 4 total mana for a 4/4 legendary human noble with Firebending 2. Whenever you cast a spell while Fire Lord Azula is attacking, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Pretty big banger, I think, in some ways. This could go in 99 of some Grixis stuff, but I think it'd be a fine commander by itself. She helps you cast some spells when she attacks. That's kind of nice, but, you know, apart from that, she doesn't have haste, which is kind of lame, but I guess the upside to that is when she does get attacking, you should have all your mana ready anyway, so that's a total of perhaps 6 or even 7 mana to cast spells, and there's no cap. There's no, like, do this only once a turn nonsense, so if I go, like, you know, 2 mana combat trick, 2 mana combat trick, 2 mana combat trick, then suddenly I'm copying a buttload of spells, dude. So, I don't know, and it's any spell for that matter. It could be instant, you know, or a creature with flash or something like that. You know, it's whenever you cast any spell, copy a creature with flash is crazy. So, again, dude, I think this could actually do some really, really fun stuff in Commander mostly. But, you know, I like that format. A slightly less exciting Commander, probably, to me at least, is Eero Grand Lotus. This is 6 mana, 3 and Temur colors, green, blue, red for a 5/5 legendary human noble ally with Firebending 2. During your turn, each non-lesson instant and sorcery card in your graveyard has flashback. The flashback cost is equal to that card's mana cost. During your turn, each lesson card in your graveyard has flashback 1. I bet you're like, why not lessons? On the first ability, how come I can't do the lessons? Because lessons cost 1, which is gross. You know, if we get enough lessons, then suddenly being able to flashback any of them for 1 is pretty good. Like, what is it, Mascot Exhibition? I can flash that back for a single mana if it's in my graveyard. Maybe I will play this as a commander. I don't know, man. I think being able to cast any lesson card in my yard for a single mana is worth, you know, pitching a lesson or two into my yard from time to time, which red can certainly do. So, I don't know, dude. I think it's kind of cool. And it's not even just a lesson commander. Obviously, like, all of your instants and sorceries have flashback now, which is good as well. So, altogether, cool looking commander. I'm starting to come around on him a little bit, but 6 mana might be a little bit too pricey. Next, we'll look at Ran and Shaw. I barely looked at you guys earlier. What do you do again? 5 mana, 3 and 2 red for a 4/4 legendary dragon with flying and firebending 2. When Ran and Shaw enter, if you cast them, and if there are 3 or more dragon and or lesson cards in your graveyard, create a token that's a copy of Ran and Shaw, except it is not legendary. You pay 4 mana, 3 and a red. Dragons you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. So, okay. I get 8 total power for 5 mana. It flies. It firebends. And, oh, I see. Okay, so if they both firebend, the copy firebend 2 as well, they both attack, that's enough mana to use the pump ability on one of them. Okay, that's cute. So I can swing for 12 the turn after I play these. But not before. It costs 5 mana no matter what, and I have to set it up. It's kind of my total takeaway on that one. I think that Dragon decks and Commander already have like way too many ridiculous options at 5 mana. I don't know if they're playing this, but it does say dragons you control get +2/+0, so I might be way off base. That could be good enough. But as far as standard goes, nah, you know, I think that our other 5 mana dragon-y options are probably for the most part better than this and don't incentivize us playing a bunch of bad cards like Lessons. So, not super excited about it in standard. But hey, you know, I do like dragons. Let's move on to the secret of Bloodbending. This is 4 blue mana, sort of, for a sorcery that is a lesson. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may waterbend 10. You control target opponent during their next combat phase. If this spell's additional cost was paid, you control that player during their next turn instead. So do you see here, cool flavor by the way, but this is 4 mana for effectively a fog, more or less, you know what I mean? Like you could not attack with their dudes is probably what's going to happen like 9 times out of 10. But if you somehow have enough artifacts and creatures to make this, to pay 14 effective mana for the spell, then you also get to just use Mindslaver, which is, this is like the second variant on that card that we have in standard that's just like, if you do this crazy thing, then you can have this card. And I'm just not into it, man. I don't think that this is very good, but again, I'll admire the design. Not every card should be good in standard. I know. Sounds crazy, right? Not every card should be good in Standard. Some cards exist to be designed, and this is one of them. But next, let's look at a couple of sagas that ended up in the Mythic Rarity slot, starting with the Legend of Kuruk. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue for a saga. On Chapter 1 and 2, you scry 2 and then draw a card for 4 mana. And then on Chapter 3, you exile this thing and then return it transformed to the battlefield under your control. It becomes Avatr Kuruk, which is actually awesome. This is a 4/3 legendary avatar. Whenever you cast a spell, create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token with this token can't block or be blocked by non-spirit creatures. It also has Exhaust, Waterbend 20 to take an extra turn after this one. So if you thought Waterbend 10 was a lot, Waterbend 20, that's ridiculous. It's so crazy, but still, I like whenever you cast a spell, you get a guy. I think it's cool. Any spell will get you a guy. And that means Waterbending 20 should be a little bit easier, but not that much easier, dang. But altogether, again, really cool design on this, and I get why it's Mythic, considering what it does do, but probably won't be the best card in Standard anytime soon, if I had to guess. And you know what? That's fine. The same thing is probably true of the Legend of Roku over here. I have a Roku TV. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 red for saga again. On Chapter 1, exile the top 3 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. All right, so a harmonize, something like that. On Chapter 2, add a mana of any color. All right. On Chapter 3, exile this saga and then return it to the battlefield transformed. Under your control, it becomes Avatr Roku. This is a legendary avatar. It's a 4/4 with Firebending 4. You can also pay 8 mana to create a red dragon creature token that is a 4/4 with flying and also has Firebending 4. So I like that. Once you've made the first dragon, now you've got 2 guys with Firebending 4, which means when they attack, you can just pay the activated ability, make another one with Firebending 4, and eventually you make 2 with Firebending 4 every turn because it doesn't tap and there's no cap to it. Like, this will probably snowball pretty quickly, right? If you can get it to work. But I'm not sure that you actually can. That's the problem. But again, a harmonize that also gives you a mana to help spend cast the spells on the next turn. Not too shabby, but again, I'm not really seeing this one spinning the block in Standard. But here's a guy I'm going to play in a bunch of Commander decks. Here's the Mechanist, Aerial Artisan. This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 1/3 legendary human artificer ally. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, just create a clue token. You can tap it until end of turn. An artifact token you control becomes a 3/1 construct artifact creature with flying. So get him for 3 flying with your clue tokens that it makes. I'll say this later in the video, but man, I just love whenever you cast a non-creature spell. Really, it almost doesn't matter what happens after that. I'm going to love it. So I like this dude. I think that if I end up with a copy of him, and I probably will because it'll be like 50 cents, he's going to end up in most of my blue Commander decks just because. Like, low-key, one of my weirdly favorite cards from today. Seriously, I can't help myself. But we'll move on to Foggy Swamp Visions. Sounds like a Fleetwood Mac song. This is 3 mana, 1 and 2 black for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, Waterbend X. Exile X target creature cards from graveyards. For each creature card exiled this way, create a token that is a copy of it. At the beginning of your next end step, sacrifice them tokens. So, 3 mana rather than 4. Like Zombify costs 4, right? And you have to have a creature out or an artifact, right, in order to actually get anything from it. That said, if you have maybe 2 artifact tokens and 2 other creatures out when you do cast it, suddenly that is 4 things from graveyards. You can get them from your opponent's graveyard too, which I think is really, really cool. But obviously you want your deck set up to where for just 3 mana on turn 4 or 5, you're getting, 4 or 5 things from your graveyard all at one time with ETB triggers or whatever, So I think this could work. Now, do note that you don't get haste. You don't naturally get haste. So you have to engineer haste in some way, or just get haste creatures, for that matter, if you want to actually attack with them. I think this is meant specifically to get ETB triggers off of, and that is kind of exciting a little bit. So I want to try the card out, but I don't know. I don't have too many visions of grandeur with the thing. I just think it might be cool. Next, we're starting to get into the pretty good stuff here, guys. This is Ty Lee Chi Blocker. This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 2/1 legendary human performer ally with both flash and prowess. When she enters, tap up to one target creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's untap step for as long as you control Ty Lee. So really reminiscent of a Flood Pit's Drowner. It does cost 50% more mana than a Flood Pit's Drowner, but this has prowess. That's pretty cool. It doesn't just put stun counters on the thing. This is for as long as you control it, the creature does not untap. And that is much better than a stun counter, I think, some of the time at least. So I don't know, dude. I think this could actually have some real chops in the Dimir deck in Standard. They probably want to be playing Kaito when they get to the 3 mana slot, but I would not be surprised if they ended up playing at least one of this card, if not a couple. I do think this basically is the same game plan they've been on for a whole year at this point, and why not more of it? Especially given the prowess, I think this is a pretty dangerous thing, but we'll move on to another cool blue creature. This is Tiger Seal here, a single blue mana for a 3/3 cat seal with vigilance. At the beginning of your upkeep, tap this creature. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, untap this creature. So that goes really, really well with Proph's Eidetic Memory, doesn't it? It's super duper well. As a 1/2 even, turn 1 seal, turn 2 Prophs, put the counter on it, draw your second card of the turn, and then untap it, move into combat, put the counter on it, swing for 4 damage in your mono blue deck before your opponent has played their second land. That could be a reality. And it's vigilant too, for that matter, so let them try to play a haste guy and get in on you. Try. But either way, first of all, second of all, really, I have to say, I like the cats in this set. There's a couple of cats that we've seen, and we'll see another cat later on, that are really bolstering the different color identities in the cat cube. We will do the cat cube. It might still be another 3 years away, but I keep talking about it for the last couple of years now. We haven't done a cube in too long. I think the next cube needs to be the cat cube. And this thing goes perfectly in it. Blue needed more cats, and it gets a really good one in this thing right here. So love that about it too. But honestly, I think this thing might be real. I really do think it might be real. It is very easy to draw your second card of the turn. And we have this second card of the turn deck kind of coming together in Standard right now, like Mischievous Mystic and a couple of other cards. And I think this just, it needs a 1-drop. And this is a perfect card for it. So just altogether, I like it a lot. Now, a card that I do not like a lot and yet acknowledge the power level of is Day of the Black Sun. Black Hole Sun. This is a X and double black for a sorcery. Each creature with mana value X or less loses all abilities until end of turn, and then destroy those creatures. Do you see what they're doing? You don't get any death triggers. It's what they're trying to do. Dumb. Can we stop doing that? What is it, Ultima, that just stops the turn or whatever it is so you don't get death triggers? And now this, and that's just so lame. It's so stinking lame, but at least this is a kind of hard to cast sweeper for the most part. The problem is that if X equals 2 and you cast it for 4 mana, well, you just blew out Aristocrats. That's all X has to equal for you to completely demolish an Aristocrats deck or a Sacrifice deck with a card like this. So it's pretty cheap to do the thing it's supposed to do, right? However, as a black sweeper in Standard right now, I think it's halfway decent. There are boards where you could just X equals 1 and blow away a bunch of stuff. But all the way up to 5 mana, X equals 3, I think you could probably take out a bunch of good boards in Standard as well. So we'll wait and see. I don't know that this quite is where it needs to be in Standard, but it has its uses in Commander, and it's always going to be annoying to me. If no one else ever plays against it, I guarantee I will run into it. With Ella Silkor, with Aristocrats, with Judith the Scourge Diva, I will run into this card, and I will curse. It'll be bad. Well, let's keep moving, man. We got to look at the Lion Turtle, another cat, this time in Simic. I'm telling you. Set is meant to fill out the cat cube. This is 1, a green, and a blue for a 3/6 legendary elder cat turtle with vigilance and reach. When it enters, you gain 3 life. This is starting to sound Uro-ish to me. The lion turtle can't attack or block unless there are 3 or more lesson cards in your graveyard. And you can tap this for a mana of any color. So it cares about lessons, which means it kind of maybe probably sucks, right? I don't want to go out on a limb and be like, this card's really good, because you probably don't want to play a buttload of lessons in your deck. I'm sorry, you probably don't. But a 3 mana 3/6 vigilance reach if you do get it online. And if you don't get it online, it's kind of like a 3 mana rock that gains 3 life when it ETBs, which I promise you is not actually that bad. It's also a creature. Even if it can't attack or block, it counts as a creature coming into play. It's a creature you can blink with, blink a creature effects and stuff, and that could work some of the time too. So even if it can't attack or block, it can still crew vehicles and, importantly, station spacecraft. So I like that about it too. Just all together, man, a pretty interesting design on the card that I think is almost there. Especially if lessons are good enough at any point, then it's definitely there. It's also a turtle. We're going to do that turtle set later, I hear. Let's move on, though, to Wan Shitong Librarian. This is 2 blue and X for a 1/1 legendary bird spirit with flash and flying and vigilance. When Wan Shitong enters, put X +1/+1 counters on him, and then draw half X cards rounded down. Whenever an opponent searches their library, put a +1/+1 counter on Wan Shitong and draw a card. So what a commander card, Bubba. But I guess there's also like the occasional fetch land that gets popped in standard, like a Fable Passage or something. So that might be good. There's a few ways that we search our library without realizing it in standard. But in commander, popping fetches, doing tutors and stuff, you're going to be drawing cards like crazy. And you can play this for just 2 mana. You can just throw this on the table for 2 mana and be like, hey, anybody want to search libraries right now? I'll draw cards off of this. This is a ridiculous card advantage piece in Commander. And the more I look at it, the more I think like this is one of the big Commander cards from the set. You can flash it in when they go to search their library and draw that way. I like that. And sometimes you'll even be able to draw a bunch of cards off it, like it's a Gadwick the Wizened, which is a card I haven't thought about in a while, but always really liked. You're only drawing half X cards, but the fact that it has flash means that it could be a really good control finisher as well. And probably even good in the mirror match against control for what it's worth, because, you know, people be searching libraries. But still, if you want to pay 6 total mana for this, right, X equals 4, that means that you get a 5/5 flyer with flash that you can play like at your opponent's instep that draws you 2 cards. And that is good. That is actually pretty good. You have to pay 8 mana to draw 3 off of it, I believe. But again, in control, that's not entirely not undoable, right? So as far as like standard control finishers go, I think there could be something to the dude, you know, especially given the flash. And the vigilance matters as a control finisher too, for that matter, you know. Just the more I look at the guy, the more I see things I really, really like about him. So keep your eyes peeled for this one. You'd be wise to do so. And that's just in standard. Again, I think in Commander, it really shines. Like staple shines. I'm like, again, the more I look at it, the more serious I am. I really think this card might be the real deal Holyfield, but we'll move on to the Fire Nation Drill and Azula Cunning Usurper, both cards that'll take a creature out when they come down. The Fire Nation Drill is, I mean, it's a Ravenous Chupacabra. It's Necrotal, you know, the exact same mana cost. 2 and double black for a 6/3 legendary vehicle with trample. When the Fire Nation Drill enters, you may tap it. When you do, destroy target creature with power 4 or less. You can pay 1 and permanents your opponent's control lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. You can crew this for 2. So this will probably be a commander playable card. In case you hadn't seen it in a while, I think the Shadow Spear is up to like $37 or some ridiculous number, because this ability, the 1 mana ability specifically, is really, really desirable. But apart from that, again, it doesn't blow up everything, but it blows up most relevant creatures and under, and is a 6 power trample guy, all for your low cost of 4 mana. So I think that is actually a pretty playable standard card, if nothing else. But again, maybe in Commander it could see some play. But that said, I've been waiting for like the second coming of Chupacabra for a while now, and I think this could potentially be it, so I get to be excited. Now, Azula Cunning Usurper is actually kind of a similar effect when you think about it. This is 5 mana, 2 blue, double black for a 4/4 legendary human noble rogue with firebending 2. When Azula enters, target opponent exiles a non-token creature they control, and then they exile a non-land card from their graveyard. During your turn, you may cast cards exiled with Azula, and you may cast them as though they had flash. Mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells. So it has to be during your turn, but it gives the things flash so that you can make use of the firebending mana, which I kind of like. But this gives your opponent some choice, unlike their usual Necrotal kind of creature, but it still has to take a non-token creature. And even if you lose the Azula at some point, they don't get their guy back, which I think is pretty cool. 5 mana is a little bit too expensive for this package for my taste, but still like something that's going to take something off the table when it comes into play, be a threat, and then even allow me to cast that thing. There's some good value on this. But next, again, really rounding the corner here, we're about to be in the top 3 cards, is Badger Mole Cub. This is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/2 Badger Mole. That makes sense. When it enters, Earthbend 1. And get this, whenever you tap a creature for mana, you get an additional green mana baby. So this doesn't actually tap for mana itself, but obviously the Earthbent land will now tap for double mana, which I think is probably good enough 9 times out of 10, right? But at the same time, next turn you could play like Enduring Vitality. And now the Badger Mole Cub does tap for mana, as does the Enduring Vitality, as does the land, right? So you're just producing an awful lot of mana like very, very quickly with a setup like that, which I think is nuts. But if you just go like Lawnmower Elf on turn 1 into Cub on turn 2, now you can tap the Elf for 2 mana. It's, come on, dude. You can tap the Forest for 2 mana, eventually. So this could actually get out of hand like very, very quickly on the easiest of setups with cards you're going to be playing anyway. Well, what are you not playing Forest Lawnmower Elves? Everyone does that. So I don't know, dude. I don't know. Just with any assortment of mana dorks or a couple of other earth-crafted things or something like Awaken the Woods and Commander or whatever, and suddenly this just gets completely sideways like a Toyota Corolla from 1986. Do you get the reference? I'm not sure that anybody does. But anyway, you'd be running in the 90s with this bad boy if you have enough mana dorks out, or a way to turn all of them into mana dorks, like Vitality or Cryptolith Rites or something like that. So just an absolutely nutso looking Magic card to me that I think is probably going to end up fetching a price before it's all said and done. Next, we got a Righteous Commander, but I don't know if it does anything besides that. This is Ozai, the Phoenix King. 6 mana, 2 double black, double red for a 7/7 legendary human noble with trample, firebending 4, and haste. Like that. Like firebending 4 and haste, son. If you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes red instead. Ozai has flying and indestructible as long as you have 6 or more unspent mana. So kind of an Omnath-y sort of ability, but on a Rakdos commander, which I think is cool. He effectively pays you back 2/3 of his mana cost the turn he comes into play. Having haste and firebending 4, I do think is a crazy combination, dude. I really do. And within a turn or 2, he can become indestructible. And a 7/7 trample indestructible is also just Bananas. So if you can get him there, he's wild. And I think there's probably ways to generate, a total of 8 mana the turn that you play him. Play him, have 2 mana open, swing in with him, boom, I have 6 unspent mana, let's go. So again, there may be setups, and as a reanimator target, I think he might be halfway decent too, because you'll be able to like zombify him on turn 4. Well, I spent 4 mana for my zombify. I get Ozai out of the graveyard. I immediately swing with him. I'm paid my 4 mana back, and I can do something during my combat step, or in this case, I can do something during my second main phase because I didn't lose the mana. Just absolutely gnarly, man. Gnarls Barkley, this guy. But again, I think he's probably a little bit too expensive, and I think we probably have better reanimator options in standard, but I'm willing to be wrong on that, dude. Arden gets a copy of this out of your graveyard, you start going to town, it could work. But next, and technically the number 4 card of the day, according to Dev's list, whatever that means, is Aang at the Crossroads. I do think this is pretty powerful. 5 mana, 2, a green, a white, and a blue for a legendary human avatar ally with flying. This is a 3/3. And when it enters, you look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature card with mana value 4 or less from among them onto the battlefield, but the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. When another creature you control leaves the battlefield, transform Aang at the beginning of your next upkeep. Aang transforms into Aang Destined Savior. This is a 4/4 legendary avatar ally with flying. Land creatures you control have vigilance, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, Earthbend 2. Now, I think that the Destined Savior half of it is pretty good. I think it's fine, especially, creature every turn is okay. But at the same time, it's this front half that I like the most. A 5 mana 3/3 flying is not the best of the thing in the world, but this is going to put a 4-drop into play if you can manage it most of the time. Not going to hit a 4-drop every time, but if you built your deck correctly, it should, and it might hit like a Biza or an Overlord of the Mistmore. Well, I can't hit an Overlord of the Mistmores, but, a decent 4-drop creature and throw it onto the table. Even if it only hits a 3-drop, I think you probably still got enough mana value out of it. So as far as ETB triggers go, I think this is a fairly strong one, especially in a set where airbending is a thing, right? Where you have a built-in, baked-in way to flicker or blink Aang. I think that the ETB trigger is just insane. So I don't know if it sees too much standard play. 5 mana is a little bit steep, but again, you want to blink something. This is a prime target right here. It's me again. Top 3 cards like I promised. My number 3 card of the day, I guess this doesn't mean like the best cards, it's just my favorite cards of the day. My number 3, I guess, is probably Sokka Tenacious Tactician, which I'm going to give the nod for like my commander of the day, like the thing that I want to build the most, but honestly, I think it's going to go in the 99 of a bunch of decks in commander as well and do just fine. This is 4 mana, 1 and Jeskai for a 3/3 legendary human warrior ally. Good creature types there. It has menace and prowess, and other allies you control also have menace and prowess. And, cool part, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get a 1/1 white ally creature token. That's crazy. I love anything that procs on non-creature spells being cast. I'm a big fan of that stupid stuff, so I could see this definitely being my commander. But outside of that, I could, again, see this being in the 99 of like Karkarwin's Fury or something like that, and a couple of other, like, Jeskai-ish. There's the Jeskai commander that, like, whenever you make a token, you also get a bird or whatever he does. Like, I could see that also kind of working out. So there's a few different Jeskai commanders I could see this like slotting into really nicely, but I just kind of want to build a whole deck around it. I am a sucker for the line, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it literally doesn't matter what happens after that, I'm going to pop for it. But the number 2 card of the day, for me at least, is a little tricksy, and I fear that it may be a bit of a trap, but I still really like The Last Agni Kai. Is that correct? I don't know if I nailed the name, but I am excited about the card, man. 2 mana, it's 1 and a red for an instant. A creature you control fights a creature you don't control, and then if the creature the opponent controls is dealt excess damage in the fight, you add that much red mana to your mana pool. And, added bonus, you don't lose unspent mana as steps and phases end until end of turn at least. So end of turn comes, you will lose the mana, but as combat ends, you won't lose the mana, which is really good with the firebending creatures in this set. So a nice little bonus there. It works pretty nicely with them in a couple of ways, but mostly I just like that it's a ritual effect in red. We just don't really see those anymore. It's not exactly Rite of Flame. It doesn't just like always work. You have to enable it, but I think that it's cool as not just a ritual effect, but a ritual effect on a removal spell. It seems like it could be really, really, really good. But final card of the day, and I'm not sure if it's like my favorite card of the day, but I do think it's going to be one of the more chase cards of the day, and that is White Lotus Tile. Again with the White Lotus. But anyway, cruising for lawsuits and over here. This is 4 mana for an artifact that enters play tapped, but you can tap it and add X mana of any one color. X being the greatest number of creatures you control that share a creature type. So now every creature type just has Priest of Titania. It costs 4 mana, and it is worth noting that it does like compete with Roaming Throne in the 4-drop slot, which I don't know if that's whatever, but in Commander at least, I think this will probably see play in, I don't know, any deck where creature type matters. I mean, obviously elves and stuff like that. And I think maybe even like standard elves. No, we've got Craterhoof Behemoth. We could make this work. But either way, I think there's other ways to, make this do labor for you in standard, especially once we get to Lorwyn. A couple of months from now, we'll have changelings. And that means this could produce a lot of mana. I'm just not really sure what you're going to do with it. Probably, I don't know what this does in standard, if it actually does anything at all, but you could probably produce a good amount of mana with it. Even if you only have 2 or 3 creatures out, it's tapping for extra mana. You can probably get like 7 or 8 next turn after you play it. Do something. Go hog wild. It's probably worth something. But either way, I think in Commander, this just sees play till the end of time. I'm not sure if it's going to be like a $10, $15 special or anything. I imagine this one might actually settle fairly, a reasonable price, but I guess that remains to be seen. We'll see if it happens. But I do think just about any time you're building a creature type that matters in Commander, at least, you're going to probably be reaching for this, like, 7 times out of 10 or more. And now I've got that obnoxious White Lotus song stuck in my head. Thanks, Wizards of the Coast, yet again for providing me with a headache on a Tuesday morning. You're really good at that. But anyway, y'all, that is actually it for today. We made it. We've finally come hand in hand together to the clearing at the end of the forest, y'all. This is the end of day 1 of Avatar previews, but join us again tomorrow where there will be fewer of them, which is good for all of us involved, I think. But join us again Thursday, where we're going to be going live on twitch.tv/SBMTGdev over there. Link in the description if you want to go ahead and follow in preparation for that. It's going to be around 8 or 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be doing all those previews live, but if you don't want to line up for that, that's fine. They're going to be on YouTube shortly after we finish up over there on Twitch. So you can just wait for them here, or you can be part of history somehow. I don't know how that works, but I'm going to run with it. You can be part of history itself and go over there and be part of the proceedings on Thursday night. But anyway, y'all, that's about it for this one. Just do all the YouTube stuff. Let me know how you felt about it down there in the comments section. Spider-Man wasn't great. Most of us agreed on that. Is this one going to be the thing that brings it around, or are we still waiting on lore winner? Maybe clearer heads prevail. We should wait till the whole thing comes out. We see what's in it. Anyway, y'all, just let me know your thoughts, feelings, and emotions down there in the comments section. Like the video on your way out. It's the one shaped like this. Can't miss it down there. Subscribe to the channel. Trying to get to 150K right now. We can do it together. And finally, I have a Patreon. If you want to reward all this hard work, I absolutely destroy myself during spoiler season. By the end of it, I'm just haggard, man. You can tell I don't shave. I'm just like, okay, these are the last like 6 cards in the set. So if you want to be like, that guy deserves $1, go over to patreon.com/SPMTG. Link in the description. Give me $1 a month. You can vote on what content we do when stuff comes out. But that's it. I'm done. I'm out of your hair for the day. I'll see you tomorrow. Love you guys. I'm Dead from the Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.